Okay, welcome to the first Midweek Matchday Live, the referee development programme from the Bucks and Bucks FA. Tonight, delighted to welcome Nathan Sherratt, Resilience Trainer and Managing Director of Referee Support Group, the Third Team. Nathan will be giving a presentation on all things mental health and refereeing. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Nathan.
Hi guys, Nathan Sherratt here. Really delighted to be obviously able to get in touch with you. Obviously not as we'd hope in a physical sense, but yeah, obviously delighted to be here. Just obviously, as Chris mentioned at the start there, this presentation that I've put together for you is going to be all around the way that we deal with the way life is at the moment, unfortunately, and the challenges that will then impact upon our refereeing careers, and more general refereeing challenges that we can maybe bear in mind for when we are able to get back out on the pitch. Okay, so as I said, I'm a resilience trainer. I'm a mental toughness practitioner. The Third Team is my business. I run it, and basically what we're looking to do is to help referees with mental health, mental well-being, resilience, mental toughness, and just give them those strategies. It's a purely non-technical thing that we do. There's no sort of technical refereeing strategy that goes with it, but it's more around the mind and the way that we approach games. So today, looking to try and give you guys a little bit more awareness around mental health, what it is, what influences the sort of the well-being side of basically our lives and the way we are at the moment, as I say, and hopefully I'll give you some takeaways that'll help boost your performances out on the pitch, give you some resilience tools and some strategies that, as I say, you can take into games, and hopefully it'll improve you that little bit extra. Because as we know, marginal gains, every little bit counts towards us being more successful. So one of the statistics that I wanted to begin with was about the challenges that we face. I'm sure that this image is one that, even if you haven't had somebody in your face, it's certainly a concept that we can all get on board with. 2017, 111 cases of confirmed referee abuse. And they come in all forms, physical, verbal. And nationally, the FA has just shy of 32,000 affiliated officials. But it's losing 6,700 last season. And that has an average over the previous 10 seasons of 10,000 nationally. Now, we're making back roughly the same number. But those who are coming back those who are bringing in, I should say, are ones who are doing it for a specific purpose, such as Duke of Edinburgh, or are obviously young referees who have ambitions naturally, but they are not the level 4s, the level 5s that we're losing, people who can be trusted on sort of contributory Super League level games. And the ultimate facts are that when you bring a young referee in, as I'm sure you all know, and as I'm sure you all recall being a young referee, the most important thing is that you have time to develop as a referee. So the shortfall is there, and that's another reason why I do what I do with the Third Team. We have a holistic approach, which is all around sort of trying to stop referees leaving the game. Referee retention is one of the big things that we want to help everyone with. So the first little quote that I've brought here is from Clark Carlisle, easy enough for me to say. Now, I've met Clark a few times through one of my previous projects that I was involved with, and he's a really good guy. And I really love this particular quote from Clark, where he talks about the fact that there is, of course, there's an appetite, and I'm sure we all see it on social media. We see it in various areas. We see it with the FA Cup, with the project that Prince William's running. There's of course fantastic goodwill, and these projects are absolutely fantastic as well. The FA Cup project I'm referring to, of course, is a fantastic project for 30, 40, 50,000 people in a stadium. They can then look at that and they can say, this game's started a minute later, and what's the reason behind that? Well, the reason that they want to know the reason is because it's a mental health reason. And then it makes them think, oh, mental health's the reason. That must be an important factor if that can alter a kickoff time in a key fixture. Another one that really caught my attention was Mike Yardy, who's a cricketer who's played for England, and he's been a very successful county cricketer as well. And I think that it's a really, really potent point that he makes here about the whole idea about the stigma that has been there in the past, without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm sure that we've had referees that have felt loathed to tell their RDO or to tell their coach or to tell a mentor, tell anybody that's involved in their refereeing career about any particular mental health challenges that they've had, because I'm absolutely certain, having spoken to a number of colleagues over the past few months, that they are concerned that, for example, they are going for promotion, and they know that if this comes up, they feel, their perception is that if this comes up, they could count against them when they're going for promotion. So it's things like that that are a really, really important thing. And to start sort of the interaction with you guys this evening, I wanted to kind of ask you if you think that from your experiences at whatever level you're at, on whatever leagues you officiate on, whether you think that there is a stigma about mental health, and particularly about discussing mental health amongst colleagues. And that's something, actually, Chris, I'm going to need your help with, because I can't see the box, the comment box. So if you guys were to just put your opinions in there, I'm going to need, sorry, Chris, for you to actually feed that back into me, because I can't see it, as I say.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, if you just want to jot in your comment in the chat box, I will relay them back for you, Nathan.
Thanks. I'll just give you guys a minute or two to maybe think about what response you might want to give to that, and then we'll feed it back. While we're just having a quick pause, I should have said, sorry, if you have a pen and paper to hand while we do this, that might help you when we get onto some parts later on in the workshop. Whenever you're ready, Chris.
I'm just waiting for a couple not to be so shy and give us some comments in the first place.
Yeah, I don't bite.
So we'll work on this one, Nathan, to start with. David has just dropped a message into the chat.
Okay.
In a previous county, I had a senior member of the RA tell me to keep my struggles away from the FA as it will harm my career.
Mm-hmm. So the perception, certainly from David there, is that in effect there is a stigma, and that is the case. Now, I don't know how long ago that was, but I would like to think that and hope that things like, myself getting out there, and I know there's a few other people involved in other aspects of football, a number of charities, particularly in my area. I'd like to think that hopefully that climate is actually changing. Was that the only comment? Was it, Chris?
We've just got one more.
Okay.
So I believe it's changed, although I've not needed to ask the questions. I've suffered with mental health issues back around 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I felt alone, as this wasn't something that I felt confident discussing.
Okay, so it does sound as if from the initial part of what you said there in his second message, that absolutely there is a positive, some form of positive change, and it's gone some way towards him seeing a change, and I hope that if he needed to raise them, and I'm fairly certain, obviously, having had conversations now, that if that was something that he needed to raise, that Barks and Bucks would certainly be a very supportive environment for him going forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to move forward now, and just really, obviously, I'm sure that a great number of you who are obviously listening here do have an understanding of mental health, but to make it 100% clear what we're talking about for everybody, and to be inclusive, I just wanted to put this sort of dictionary definition of what we're talking about when we mention mental health. So we're talking about someone's condition, with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being. And of course, I'm sure that we all appreciate the fact that mental health is integral and an essential component of our overall well-being, physical and mental. And of course, I'm sure you've had time to absorb what we're saying there, but I'm sure we know that if mentally we're not feeling great on any given day, that will have an overall effect upon our mood and every aspect of our lives as we face those challenges. Another thing that I've pulled together that I really wanted to kind of impress upon you guys is the fact that 1 in 5 people have a mental disorder, and 1 in 2 people experience mental health challenges in their lifetime. So, if we had 20, 30, 40 people, if we had 30 people in this particular session this evening, then 15 of us are gonna face a mental health challenge in their lifetime, in our lifetimes, I should say. So I think it's really important to know that, because I think it's important that we can appreciate all the people around us, are in effect just as susceptible or as culpable as you want to say, as anyone else. And I think particularly this bottom statistic for me, the bottom 2 statistics really about young people, but really the bottom statistic, I'm 22 years old, and the fact that the anxiety and depression has risen 48% since 2004, which is through my childhood, is something which is really, really keenly felt by me, and I'm sure that there's a lot of young referees with us this evening that will understand that and will have seen that themselves as well. So I touched on it when I was talking about the dictionary definition of mental health, but the facts are plainly simple. You're likely to be less effective in your job or as a referee, and you're more likely to miss matches, and you're more likely to have absences from work, and ultimately, and you hope that no mental health challenge comes to this, that you find yourself more likely to be unemployed. And that's why I think there is a real importance upon trying to, I suppose the most kind of layman's terms about it is to nip it in the bud. Because if you can deal with it, much in the same way that if you had, for example, something that needed treatment by antibiotics within your physical health, you would do that before that particular ailment became a bigger problem. And I think that that's the attitude that we're really looking for with mental health. We're looking to try and lead health as healthy a life as possible. And in that respect, we're also looking to try and solve the problems before they become problems that can cause real damage within our lives. Now, this leads me on to this psychological model and talking about the situation that we're in now. Coronavirus, unfortunately, is something that has had a really destructive impact upon the way we live our lives, and it's been incredibly devastating for families, for friends, you know, who have obviously been apart, but also unfortunately experienced bereavement. And so the way that I thought would be a really good way of kind of putting this idea across is to use the model which was devised by Ryan and Decky, two very prominent psychologists, around basically what our three most basic psychological needs are. So you can see on the screen we've got autonomy, relatedness, and competence. And the ideal for that is that we have a pretty even balance of the three. That's what we're kind of looking for amongst many things. If we have a good balance, we'll be in a pretty good place. Autonomy is the one I'll start with, and it's all about the sense of control that we have in our lives. And if we apply this to coronavirus, we can see that a lot of our autonomy, or the sense of control that we have within our lives, is actually diminished greatly at the moment, because there's a lot of uncertainty about what the future holds for us. But there's also a lot of restrictions. I remember the headline on the news when the first lockdown began on the 23rd of March. They said this is the biggest impingement on our freedoms for many decades. And I think that that's something that obviously a lot of people in our society nowadays, we weren't alive during any wars or any great sort of challenges that we faced since that time. So it's something that's totally new, totally radical, and a real shake-up of our way of life. And I think one of the best examples I can give for this is about using a scale of 1 to 10 based on how we feel. If I use myself as an example of sort of promoting this idea, I would say that for me, in the first phase, which obviously, as I touched on, began towards the end of March, when I think about myself, out of 10, I would say I was probably feeling 2 or 3 about things. You know, I felt restricted within my home, and I found it really difficult to do a lot of the things that I do in my normal life. And one of the things that I will say is that since we've entered the second phase of the lockdown, I've been able to see my feeling, my score out of 1 or 10, go up to maybe 1 to 10, I should say, go up to maybe 6 or 7, because I'm a keen golfer, and that's where I can get my sort of sport kick, if you like. It's something I can really put my energy into, and I can really enjoy doing. And it gives me that sense of sport which I've missed, which is something that's really positive for my mental well-being, for me personally. So then when I think about relatedness, that's about how we are connected to others, and our sense of being connected, so how we feel about that. And again, I think we have a real example. I'm sure that many people who are involved in this session this evening have had video calls, Skype, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever it may be, with friends, family, extended loved ones, and then that's been the most contact that they could have in months. And particularly in the first phase of the lockdown, that was really the only thing that you could do. And of course, I've noticed that there's been a huge uptake in online quizzes, with people kind of coming in from all over the place, different places, to come into one session to have a quiz, which obviously passes the time. You can't go out with your friends socially, so you socialize with them by doing a quiz. And I think that as we've gone into, I don't even know what phase we're in starting Monday. Is it 2? Is it 3 that we're in now? Whichever we're in, since the phase has moved forward, I know that obviously we're now able to be safely, well, certainly in the UK, I should say. I know that we've got some guys from the US on. In the UK, we're able to meet with people within groups of 6. Within a 2-meter safe zone. So that has obviously meant that if we apply again the 1 to 10 rating of how we feel about this, we might feel more north of 5. We might feel a 6 or a 7, because at least we can be face to face with our loved ones, and we're not cursing the poor internet connection or whatever it may be that makes you feel even more distant from them. At least you can have that conversation in a face-to-face manner, even if it is at a 2-meter distance. But of course, one of the big things that we have to take into consideration is the fact that there may be people involved in this session today, but there are obviously a great number of people who are living alone, and for them, this is an even more difficult scenario than for those of us who are lucky enough to live with friends, relatives, or loved ones, because at least we have someone to have the sort of day-to-day conversation within the home, which a lot of people have actually suffered without. The final part of this model that I want to talk about is the competence part, which is all about our sense of mastery and accomplishment that we get from the tasks that we do. Now, if I've touched upon my sort of recreational hobbies, such as golf for me personally, and of course I've talked about how myself putting all my energies into improving my golf game, while I can't referee football matches or I can't be involved in any other real sports, is something that's really good for my well-being, and my mastery of that is something that would go up on the scale of 1 to 10 that we talk about, because I've got that opportunity to improve that. But when I think about refereeing football matches, as I've just said, I'm almost certainly a 0, because I'm not able to get out there and referee football matches at the moment. I'm able to do a lot of preparation in terms of thinking about next season and thinking about what I can do to make sure that I'm back in good shape, and I can think about it, and I can train and do those bits, but not actually do the refereeing. And when I think about it from a business sense and a working sense, which I'm sure a lot of you guys work for a living and think about that side of it. Obviously the third team is my business, and if I look at my business as an example, I can say yes, I'm able to market, fine, but in terms of my meetings with clients, they are impacted by furlough, they're impacted by obviously the fact that we have to do it over Zoom or Teams or Skype. But I know that my delivery of my content is restricted to situations such as this one, where I'm not face to face in the room, which is obviously my preferred method of delivery. And of course, the training and development side for myself that I like to improve, and to improve my knowledge. A lot of trainers and courses that I would attend are ended. So I think it's important, as I say, to try and get a balance of these 3 things: autonomy, relatedness, and competence. But also thinking about those who may be furloughed or redundant, and how much of a struggle these three things are just at the moment, and about driving our attentions into other tasks, even things like gardening and cooking and learning a new skill such as a musical instrument are things that we can do to improve our mastery, because those are things that we can drive our attention into and get a sense of accomplishment from. Now, controlling the controllables is a concept that I really wanted to put across in this session, because as the title suggests, there are things that we can control and there are things that we can't control. And I'll come on to that further later on in the presentation. But the kind of message that I wanted to put across here is, as I've touched on throughout the workshop, coronavirus is an incredibly emotional thing, whether it be the fact that you are isolated physically from people, or whether it is that you've experienced bereavement, as I said, which is obviously an incredibly emotion, one of the worst emotions that we can actually experience as human beings. But the impact is one that's incredibly varied. You know, in different counties, in different countries, we're all having different experiences of this particular virus. And the controllables concept is about, well, what's in the control? Well, if we look at the gentleman in the picture, we can see that he's out running and he's working on his fitness. Now, that could be a referee. And that could be a referee who's got a really positive attitude and thinking, yeah, okay, it's really, really unfortunate. It's really sad. I'm actually quite upset that I'm not able to referee football matches at the moment. I miss my colleagues. I miss the banter that we have. I miss the challenge that games bring. But I'm going to make sure that when it comes back, I'm going to be in the best shape possible, and I'm going to be the best referee that I can be. But we have a choice. We can do that. We can be the guy on the left, or we can be the guy on the right that you see, who is dwelling on the negatives. You know, there, as I said, you know, you've got situations such as furlough, and they impact upon the way that you think about your finances and things such as that. And whilst they are massive concerns, and quite rightly should be considered, they should not be overthought about, because you know, you can lose sight of the facts, which are, this is a virus that we are still challenging, and it's not within our control. I really wish it was, but it's not within our control to end the virus and then end the impacts that the virus brings. So I just want to think about the way we control the controllables, and thinking about what I've touched on throughout this. This exercise is designed, I'm going to do an exercise now. This exercise is designed to help you feel more in control of the situation that we find ourselves in. And I'm going to give you sort of 2 or 3 minutes to make a note of some things that you think are out of your control. And I'm going to ask you to put them in the chat box. I've given you 3 examples on the screen here to give you an idea of the kinds of things that we're talking about. And basically, I'll give you a couple of minutes. And Chris, if you could sort of feed that back in sort of 2 or 3 minutes time about what the ideas that are being shared in the chat box are around things that we can't control, that would be great.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Right, Nathan, I've got a couple I'm just going to throw at you from here.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll go from the top.
Okay.
Starting with the weather. So we've got another one about my control is when we will get back onto the pitch. Again, that may come down to sort of the FA decision and the government decisions.
Yeah.
We've got one good one from Steve. People not respecting the guidelines and putting others at risk. Spectators.
Okay. I'm not actually specifically talking about refereeing at the moment. I'm talking about our lives at the moment. I will come on to that later on in the presentation, though.
Okay, so there's one here, unable to see family, and obviously potentially catching the virus themselves.
Yeah.
Do you want to work on those two for the time?
Yeah, I can do.
Yeah. Come back to me in a minute. I'll see if anything else is coming.
Okay. I'll give you. I'll give you another minute because on the next one I'm going to talk about the potential, obviously, of what the answers could be and how we can explore that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got another one. Obviously, children not being able to go to school, particularly those with exams coming up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other people's views.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant.
So we've got a couple more. Obviously, perhaps outside interest being one of them. Not being able to continue sort of the hobbies and things that people are doing.
Yeah, that's an excellent one. That, yeah.
And also other people's political opinions, but obviously it's up to you whether you engage in it or not.
Yeah.
Other issues in the world. Someone's highlighted obviously what's happening in the USA at the moment.
Of course, it's very important that we don't sort of ignore these issues. You know, unfortunately, life goes on. You know, I saw a prominent professor of a institution that tackles cancer saying, obviously, just because of coronavirus, it doesn't mean that other diseases such as cancer are not going to be detected, unfortunately. So that means that people need to keep going to the doctors if they feel a lump in an area or if they feel something that's a sort of a sign of a potential issue such as that. And he was basically saying that the diagnosis numbers have dropped, but the number of people who get cancer won't have dropped. So we need to make sure that these people are not unfortunately going to die because of a consequence of this. Which I think is a really, really important thing to highlight. So yeah, it's a great point. Have you got one more?
Someone's just come in with the other people's social distancing, or perhaps lack of it, I think is the is the question there.
Right, that's brilliant. And on that note, we've got that there, other people's actions. So Steve alluded to it with that as well in terms of what he said, which I think was a really good point. We've got obviously the one I've got government guidelines on there, and that's that really links into the person who mentioned about the opinions that we have politically about the way that this is being handled. The first point I think it was that you gave to me about how sport's going to be impacted is a really, really important one because, I'm sure tongue in cheek, of course, but, people on Twitter saying I'll never take sort of Burnley against Watford, apologies if those are your teams, but Burnley against Watford, I'll never take it on Super Sunday, I'll never take it for granted again. So it's things like that of course we're missing situations such as that. And I know that there's a lot within the public domain, which is being missed, unfortunately, at the moment. But yes, school hobbies are a really, really important thing. And I think we talk about the lack of social distancing as well. Of course, we're talking about the amount of people shopping and things like toilet roll shortages and things like that. I can imagine that actually, for people who have maybe conditions or whatever it may be, that causes an awful lot of anxiety for them. So just going to think about it. I'm going to basically kind of repeat this a little bit now, thinking about it the other way around, about what we can control. And again, this is the way what I want you to consider as maybe one of your takeaways from this evening is what can you control, because those are the things that should kind of be in your mind, thinking about what you do, and how you live your life, because you can control those, and they can ultimately give you a bit more happiness and make you feel a little bit more control of the situation. So I'll just give you another 2 or 3 minutes there, and again, just use the chat box and give me some ideas on that.
Okay, so we've got a few answers coming in. Fitness and healthy eating.
Excellent.
How to approach the current situation and how you adapt for life afterwards.
Yeah.
How to effectively use time.
Yeah, brilliant one.
How honest I am and how many risks I take.
Yeah.
So we've got health and fitness. How deeply I look for evidence to back up what I hear in the news. Can choose what to disregard and what not to.
Yeah.
So staying in touch with friends and family, I guess, although it may well be virtually.
Yeah, excellent. Have we got one more, Chris?
Yeah, and we're kind of looking along the lines of perhaps the leisure time as well. How much time is being spent on leisure and what you actually do with it.
Okay, yeah. That is a great point. So with that, we'll look at what I've got. I think exercise and nutrition were the first two that we really talked about, which I think are great things. Again, we talked about the risks that we're going to take. We can look at our attitude. We can look at whether we follow guidelines, and about as I said, about the honesty of that, choosing what we believe. That's our attitude, of course, as well. The contact that we have with other people. Obviously, I touched on it before about, there seems to be a lot of people at the moment doing quizzes, through, as I said, through Zoom, through Skype, through Teams. So that really links into whether we have fun at home. So I think we have a lot of choice here, and one of the ones I've put here, about turning off the news. This is something that I was reading a report the other day which said that basically you can get everything you need to get from watching the first 10 minutes of every hour bulletin on the news, and you don't need any more than that. You can understand everything you need to know, all the crucial detail. And basically the survey or the study, whatever it may be, has shown that if you only take the 10 minutes on a periodic basis, so maybe once or twice a day, you'll know everything you need to know, but also you'll be happier. A lot of the items further down the news at the moment are stories that are really affecting the mood and the mental feeling and well-being amongst a lot of the viewers, which I think was something really important, and it's something I think we can all bear in mind. So I'm bringing back the Ryan and Decky model again, because it's a really, really useful model. And obviously now I've explained it about autonomy, relatedness, and competence, and how it's important to have a balance of the three. It's another vehicle that we can use to maybe think about how we're doing this. So self-care is what we want to talk about as we come out of it, and I hope that's just sooner rather than later. Come out of the coronavirus pandemic, and I hope that's sooner rather than later. But the reality is that we could be in and out of various phases of lockdown in various areas as well. You know, obviously I'm up in the northeast, and we may need more stringent measures than you guys do down in Berkshire or Buckinghamshire, or maybe even in the United States, as I know we've got a few guys from the United States who are tuned in. And it's perfectly natural to feel overwhelmed and helpless at times with the situation that we're in. But the reason that we did the previous task about controlling the controllables is exactly for that reason, because there are a lot of things that we came up with there that we've shared in this session that are really positive things that we can use to reflect our current situation and focus on things that are really helpful to us as individuals. Thinking now about the relatedness aspect of that, we've been isolated from friends, family, and our colleagues, some of whom we may consider to be friends, and friends that we've made through refereeing, and we miss those people. Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and that has a negative impact on our mental health. And there's no doubt about that. So finding the ways to stay connected online, or ideally face to face at a safe social distance, will do wonders for your mental health, in terms of your mental health, your well-being, your mood. Everything will lift, and your outlook will then look to improve. Thinking about competence, you know, I'm sure the majority of the guys that we have on the call here are people who are employed or self-employed or whatever, in some form of work, and are referees as well. So the areas in our lives, the two key areas in our lives where we normally find mastery when we're thinking about competence, are in the work that we do on a day-to-day basis and in our refereeing. And if we're furloughed and we're not refereeing, that is going to have a real negative effect on our sense of mastery, and it will be greatly diminished our sense of mastery and competence. So there's a really important aspect of our lives, and I guess we kind of owe it to ourselves to think about what other ways can we do this. Can we, as I said, you know, the weather's been absolutely wonderful, and I'm sure it's been the same in your area. So can we get out in the garden? Can we, you know, has our wife or our significant other or our girlfriend, husband, have they been on us to, you know, paint the fence or do whatever it may be? Can we do that? And then can we get that sense of accomplishment from finishing painting the fence that you've been trying to do for 6 months or whatever it may be? Can we learn the violin? Have we always wanted to learn the violin? You know, the violin's one example. And then can we then get a tune out of that and play a song that's well known, Happy Birthday or something like that, and then get that sense of accomplishment from achieving the ability to play that song on a newly learnt musical instrument. Or maybe it's something that you've already got, like myself. I've played golf for a number of years, but now there's no better time than now in my spare time to improve that and try and get my handicap down. So yeah, if you might have to use the example of the musical instrument and the violin again, it could be a case of you learned violin at school, you got to grade 1, you've never picked up a violin since, and you think, yeah, I want to get that back. I've been wanting to pick up a violin for years. I've still got one in the loft or whatever. When I get it down, I'm going to learn to play it fluently, if that's the correct term, once again. But as I've said, as I said at the start of this, and when we looked at the model in a different context, trying to have a balance between the three is really, really important. In a difficult situation such as the one we face now, you may feel that you fall in one way in terms of into one of these three categories more heavily than the others, which is perfectly normal during stressful times, and then it's fine to be aware of that. But as I said, in the longer term, what we're looking for is to try and find a good balance of the three. Okay, I'm going to change gear a little bit now and think about refereeing and think about the performance side of refereeing. So I'm in the next section of this session, I'm going to shift the focus to performance, and I'm going to use the chat box again to just have a little bit of a discussion about what we think the qualities of a world-class referee are. What are the components that comprise a world-class referee? So as I said, obviously the chat box is open there, and it would be great, Chris, if you could just sort of help me out with that as it comes.
Right, Nathan, I'm just going to chuck some words at you then, if I can.
Brilliant.
Determination, tolerance levels, fitness, calm and composed. We've got confident.
Yeah.
Knowledge of the laws of the game. Presence, decision making, body language.
Brilliant.
Decisiveness, professionalism, empathy, personality.
Some fantastic ones here. These are really, really good.
Communication and man management.
Yeah.
Drive.
Brilliant.
And what I know you're going to like, resilient and consistent.
Brilliant. Yeah, links in with our hashtag perfectly. Hashtag resilient referees. It's what we want to be. It's what we aspire to. It's what we need to be as well, of course.
Yeah, communication.
Yeah.
Rob shipped him with passion, and then Mike Dean in brackets.
Yes, I think Mike loves his job, and it shows. But yeah, of course, there are difficult moments in refereeing. And if you don't love it, that's going to really affect your ability to stick in and to achieve and to climb the ladder.
Probably one I should have also touched on there was consistent as well.
It's what players, coaches, everybody, spectators, everybody asks for. It's probably the thing that referees get asked for the most. Okay, I'm gonna basically. I haven't got a box to feedback, but I did have a few of them written down here in front of me, and you probably said it, Chris, but you were firing a few at me, so I didn't. But basically, I've got a list of words here, and you've ticked them all apart from focus. But you might have said that I didn't maybe catch it. But brilliant. Those are the ones that have come up for me that have been really crucial in terms of what the majority of people have said. But brilliant to also get the other things about determination, the fitness, the management skills, which is so important. I know that we've got some observers with us this evening, and I know that that's something that when referees are being assessed and observed, whichever the correct use of language is these days, I know that management skills is something that they are really, really looking at. So I think it's a really, really important thing that to get to be a world-class referee, it's absolutely imperative. But I know that even for referees who are looking to get from level 7 to 6 to make that first promotion, to get good management skills is a key. Drive, resilience, passion, consistency is, again, as I've touched on, passion and consistency. The last two, they are really important for the reasons that I outlined previously. And the next one is about challenges. Yeah, we all have challenges as referees. We've all had to come up against them. So yeah, just obviously to bear in mind, the facts are, we've talked about the communication skills and the presence and the confidence and all of that. They are also challenges as well, because they're qualities, but they're challenges because we have to sometimes improve those things to be able to get to the next level. We might not have a good enough presence in an early stage, and it might be something that we look to develop. And then when we get that promotion, we can look back and say, yeah, when I improved my presence on the pitch, I was able to referee the game more effectively. Or if my body language was a little bit better, I was able to do that. So just put a few in, 2 or 3 minutes again, and love to hear the feedback from the group on that again.
So I'll start with a few. We've got a few come in there, Nathan.
Yeah.
The abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Pleasing both sets of players at any one time.
Okay.
Pressure that's obviously placed on being the referee.
Yeah.
We've got being surrounded by players after a foul.
Mass confrontations.
Yeah. Spectators at grassroots level.
Brilliant.
There's a good one here actually as well from Paul. Being injured. is actually the worst feeling and the biggest
Okay,
challenge.
I'm going to come on to that. So that's a really good one from Paul. Thanks for that, Paul.
And we've got one from David as well, dealing with failure.
Yeah. Part of success, failure.
We've got maintaining fitness levels, being able to overcome criticism of performances, and to actually use that criticism as a development point, to try and turn that situation into a bit of a positive.
Yeah.
Players respecting your decisions and letting you explain why you made that decision.
Okay.
There's a lot of sort of communication aspects coming into here of sort of talking to players.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. I'm gonna take that forward and just say, yeah, abuse is something that we talked about right at the very, very start. So it's something that unfortunately we all encounter. It's wrong. It's incorrect, particularly when it's aimed at very young referees who are still children. But it's something that unfortunately we have to accept that if we're going to come into the job, we are only probably going to be able to please, because I know that somebody else has put here about trying to please everybody. We're probably only going to be able to please one set of players, spectators, club officials at any one time, really. There are obviously going to be occasions where we can make decisions that everybody agrees with, but they might not even let us know that. They might give us a hard time. But I think that one of the great ones that I heard was about pressure, and I think that that's a real mindset thing. We need to look at pressure as something that's actually, I think it's a phrase, isn't it? That pressure's a privilege, and I think that pressure is something that obviously comes with refereeing. But if we relish the pressures, then it will definitely make us better, because it's all about the way we look at challenging the eye and sort of stand up to it, really. So yeah, that comes, I think, when we talk about accepting decisions. Again, spectators, particularly for young referees, is something that's really important. And I know that a number of counties have introduced, I think, yellow socks. They've got purple shirts. They've got armbands. There are a number of things for youth referees and for new referees as well, of any age, which they're trying to do to improve that. But I think that it's always going to be a challenge. And we talked about the statistic right at the very start about we lost 6,700 referees last year. We're losing on average 7,000 over the last 10 seasons. One of the biggest things that you can sort of pin that on is the way that parent spectators handle young referees. There is that makes up a huge amount of that demographic, because if you're a young referee and you're doing it to develop your skills as a young person, young adult going into life, and you want a bit of pocket money on the side as well, and you want to try and improve as a referee, and you think, yeah, that could be a good refereeing career. There's not a bigger turn-off than turning up to your first game on a Saturday and getting a load of abuse from players, spectators, and people like that. There's no bigger turn-off than that. And so those are the real challenges that you have to overcome, I think, if you're going to be really successful. And I know that Paul, as I said, he made a terrific point about injuries, which is something I'm going to come on to just now, because really this all links into obviously what we talked about with coronavirus, and now what we're talking about in terms of the sort of performance side of it, about things like routine, which is another thing I'm going to come on to, about trying to do the right things in our routines as a referee on a match day, but also trying to do good things in our routines on a day-to-day basis during this difficult time that we face, and not doing things which are really unhealthy, such as lying in bed in the morning and going to sleep, almost in the middle of the night, because that's where you're going to start to come into problems. We've touched upon, obviously, diet being a big thing. There are a lot of minds out there at the moment who are a lot of minds which are unoccupied at the moment, as I touched on with furlough, and schools being off and all that kind of thing, universities on pause, and I know that there's a lot of trouble in that area of things at the moment. So trying to think about healthy meals, we've talked about cooking. You could prepare a fresh home cooked meal, which is going to be really good for you. And it's actually going to be beneficial because you'll get your sense of achievement, which I talked about, and what you can do to obviously develop that is to use the video tutorials on things like YouTube, and look up on the internet, of course, recipes as well, which you can kind of set your fires burning and your passion going for cookery as well. Big one for us as referees, of course, is regular exercise. It's one of the biggest and most easy ways to maintain good mental health and to improve your mental health is by exercising. Even if you're having maybe a tough time and you just get out for a walk for half an hour, that can really, really be beneficial for your mental well-being going forward, and trying obviously to incorporate that and your exercise plan into your daily routine is brilliant as well. There's been so many fantastic resources from a number of refereeing bodies, refereeing authorities during this lockdown period. I hate this because I can never remember exactly what they're called, but I think it's called, is it the National Young Referees Development Team? I think I've got that right. They have put out on a weekly basis some fantastic exercise plans for even just inspiration. It's been absolutely wonderful things that you can tap into, and I know that many county football associations as well are obviously offering guidance through Hive platforms, laws of the games quizzes. There are a number of things that you can do to sort of keep you that fire and that passion that you've got for refereeing burning during this sort of period of inactivity. And here we go for Paul here, fantastic point that he made about rehabilitation recovery. I'm sure that there'll be at least one of you who are involved in this session this evening who have gone through a period where you've had a couple of knocks, but you're in for promotion or whatever it may be, and you basically don't want to miss games, or you can't afford to miss games because you'll not hit the number of games that you need to do to get your promotion. So this period now is fantastic. You can address the knocks that you might have been carrying over the course of the season. You can try and put to bed the more longer term and underlying injuries that have sort of plagued you over a longer period. And of course, if you're injured, with the best will in the world, if you've got a physical injury, it's probably no better time in terms of that feeling of missing out to have an injury or to be recovering from an injury, because it means that you're not going to miss as many games, and more likely than not, you're going to actually be able to get back to football when everybody else does. So there are many things, of course, that we say, and of course, the one thing I will always say is your physical health is absolutely paramount to having success from a mental health perspective as well. I know that there's been a real upsurge, if that's the right term, in people consuming alcohol, and of course that in tandem with a good diet is something that you need to obviously make sure is possible. And of course, my biggest bit of advice that I'll always say to anybody is, if you are worried about anybody or you're worried about yourself, if you know a mental health first aider, or even you might feel the need to reach out to a GP, that is the one thing that I will give the biggest sort of bit of advice to, really, because it is really important to bear that in mind. Your mental and physical well-being are obviously paramount to your success going forward. And yet, I've touched on this when I was talking about the laws of the game quizzes and things like that, that I know that a few sort of refereeing bodies and county FAs and everybody else is laying on. They are really, really important things to do, but it's wider. It's not just to do with your refereeing. You have wider opportunities for personal and professional development. And there are wonderful training courses that you can do that are free, which you can look into as well, which is only going to expand your mind. And again, reaching back to what we used on the model, Ryan and Decky, thinking about the sense of accomplishment and the mastery aspects of things. If you throw your efforts and your energies into improving your level of qualification, then that's going to give you something to be immensely proud of. And of course, the county FA again as well can play a big part in terms of what I talked about before about referees and being colleagues and friends. The use of WhatsApp groups could be really important for referees to keep the bond strong, to maybe have a laugh and a joke about the games that you've done together or whatever. And that gives you then that sense of being connected and the relatedness that we talked about on the Ryan and Decky model. So there are fantastic things that we can do in that respect as well. The other thing I just want to touch on again is, and I touched on it there about routine in our wider life, I just want to think about it from a refereeing perspective here a little bit more, because it is obviously perfectly natural to feel anxious about games, to feel uneasy, around potential errors that you may or may not have made. I think that's one of the big things that I can put across is, of course, you may feel you've made a mistake in a game walking off the pitch, but actually the reaction to it, and then speaking to potentially people who were there, they might not have picked up on that, or they might have thought that what you did was actually right. So sometimes you can catastrophize things in your own mind, which is not a good thing. And it's something that, you need to think, well, if the decision was accepted, it's gone, we get on with it, we carry on, next decision, because ultimately we're making just shy of 300 decisions per game in a 90-minute match. So one thing and mulling over it for too long is going to have a negative knock-on effect for the rest of the decisions that you're going to make throughout that 90 minutes. But of course, we work with colleagues and we think that they've got it all together and they're confident and they're prepared. And we think, what is the secret to that? Well, there isn't one. But it's about thinking about the pre-match routine, because that can be a great way to set the tone for delivering the perfect match. Not the perfect match, obviously, so that's not really obtainable, but in terms of delivering a really strong match, I should say. That's better use of language from me. So yeah, thinking about, not thinking, I should say, about the what ifs, and maybe looking around us and thinking too much about spectators or teams or, what may or may not be trying to intimidate you, and thinking about what you do within your game is brilliant. I am a massive advocate of self-talk almost, because I think it really allows you to sort of be at one with yourself. So I think about asking yourself, right, what do I need to do to put me into my correct mindset to referee a match? What actions do I need to take prior to a game to help me perform at my best? And I think that's your mental side of it. You've got the physical side, of course, as well, to make sure that you're physically ready and you're not going to sort of pull a hamstring or a groin or something 5 minutes into the game. So, mentally ready, physically ready, the two key components. I've talked about mental health and physical health. The same applies to refereeing. Things like the order that you're going to do your drill in the warm-up, are you going to do, I don't know what the correct word is here, bottom kicks, or are you going to do open the gate, or whatever you're going to do, first or second, and is there a reason for that? And I think one of the best ways you can do it is to work it out, to write it down, and then just take it with you. And then you've got it as a little reminder as you leave the dressing room to do your warm up. Okay, that's what I want to do. It's the way I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to integrate that into my pre-match mental preparation as well. So I'm going to think about how I'm going to do it as I'm driving to the game, perhaps in the car. And that's going to really improve your confidence, your focus, and your kind of intrinsic trust in your own skills and abilities when it goes out on the pitch. Because I think the most important thing that you can remember to do, and what you owe to yourself, is to stay focused on preparing yourself mentally and physically for the game, and not to think about the players that might be playing or what the result and the ramifications of the fixture are. You're there to referee a football match, and not to be concerned or caught up in anything that might go alongside that. Okay, so I've talked about, and we've discussed as a group, we've had some fantastic ideas, and the engagement has been fantastic. I really appreciate that. So we've discussed what we can and can't control in terms of coronavirus, and I'm also now thinking about what we can and can't control on the football pitch, which is obviously something I touched on before. I'm not going to ask for you to come in on this, but you understand the concept of the activity, and maybe doing this as, I hate the word homework because I used to hate homework at school, so I'm not going to use that word, but it might be something that you might want to do after the session, where you sit and you write out what can you control on the pitch. And I've given you some examples there as well of things such as player conduct, the weather, which somebody mentioned brilliantly before, and the result of the game. So yeah, thinking about that, thinking about what we so thinking about that is brilliant. So we've discussed, again, as I said, what we can't control in fixtures, and what we can't control in coronavirus. And one of the things that we all know that we can't control is what others are possibly saying or doing about us as referees on social media. But we can control what we do, which brings me on to the social media side of what I'm talking about. If you'd excuse me, sorry. Yeah, so I'm just sort of thinking about now the way that we make decisions on the football pitch. Well, we want to make the right decisions online as well, in terms of the presence that we have on social media. We know as referees that it doesn't matter what is going on. If we have a refereeing colleague at the top level who's maybe refereeing a televised match, is maybe a Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga, FIFA, international referee, whatever it may be, in any of those games, they make a decision, correct or incorrect, and it's online in a heartbeat, in a click of the fingers. And it's on social media more often than not. And then what you then get is something which is dissected inch by inch. I think you might have seen it recently, since football's returned with the Bundesliga. There was an incident involving a Bayern Munich defender, which is a great example of kind of what I'm talking about here, because they're then thinking, right, the decision of that referee, that's then going to be taken out of context. His interpretation of the laws of the game will then be misunderstood. And then, you have a real witch hunt for that referee. We know that social media is a fairly new thing, in terms of the fact that the advent of it is really something that's taken place in the last 15 or so years. And it's absolutely changed the face of the way that human beings communicate with each other on virtually every level. And basically, I've put together some kind of points here about how we can maybe, I suppose what I'm trying to say is make the good come out of social media, because there's a lot of good stuff on there. I talked about it. I touched on it just briefly before when I was talking about the National Young Referee Development Group, which again I think I've got right. They're putting some fantastic content out for referees, and that's one of the real positive uses of social media that you can see these days, you know, for referees, and thinking about us as referees, because, you know, there are things that can assist referees and make things better, but of course we understand that the platform has negatives. So trying to think about our involvement in social networks, which impact obviously the social, the personal, and the professional areas of your life. Now, of course, all the referees, every referee of any level and of any kind, is entitled to portray themselves on social media as they wish to be seen. But you've got to think about, if you're going to comment on your role as a referee, or you're going to comment on anything as a referee, you've got to think, if my football association and the people who are trusting me to officiate games, whether that be a league selection or whether that be a selection of from the county football association or anyone else, they need to be shown in a realistic light. You know, people talk about fake news and all sorts of things like that quite regularly now, and you know, it's something that we don't want to see it getting exaggerated. We don't want negative press for those who administrate football. I think the other thing that we can do, which is really, really important, I think, is to be an important ambassador for football and for our colleagues as officials. If there's one group of people that are unpopular in football, it's generally us. And I think that if we can, and I see a lot of good things where people will say, oh, Michael Oliver's had a great season, or Stuart Atwell had a wonderful game there. And that's brilliant when referees can say that. Or, you know, for example, Mike Dean got that penalty decision bang on. That's brilliant for football officials, of course, at the top level, but also it's really important for us to be ambassadors, because then we are saying that's good practice from a colleague of ours. One of the big things that, you know, we talk about from a negative side is about our private lives and our personal details. We need to think about not disseminating personal details such as telephone numbers or addresses, and trying to protect our working environment and basically not doing things that could compromise our reputations ultimately. I know that there is a lot of guidance around passwords and things like that, so trying not to obviously be misrepresented is something that's really, really key, because making comments, you know, I'm absolutely certain that a good number of you will be aware of the situation that surrounded Bobby Madley and how he lost his job with the Premier League and obviously came away from the panel. And he's talked openly about that. And you know, if you're not aware of that, then obviously that's something that he's put out online, and you can catch up with after this. But ultimately, he had some online activity on a social media account, and it you know, in terms of his comment, it misrepresented him. That is what he's saying. So don't allow yourself to even get into that position is probably a key message that I'm trying to put across here. Also thinking about individuals who could pose a threat. I saw something, unfortunately, with another county recently. A referee was trying to do a talk, I think it was on communication actually, and it's during this lockdown period. It was a referee, Premier League referee, was doing a talk, and unfortunately the ramifications of a decision that he'd made in a Premier League game earlier this season meant that fans of that club then hijacked that particular connection, and as far as I'm aware, that session was then not able to be delivered. So I think that that's really, really important to think about the way that, I think it's a lesson probably, I don't believe I'm speaking out of turn here when I say it's probably a lesson for the County Football Association to think we can't post the link to the particular meeting online, because there is the potential that if this referee has upset a particular fan base, that those fans could then hijack any potential session that's being delivered. So I think that's important to bear in mind, that we obviously we don't do things like that and engage with people who could pose a threat or try to spoil what we're trying to do, if it's a positive thing, obviously, in terms of refereeing. And of course, to think about the opinions again, I'm going to come back to the opinions. If we share opinions on social media, that they're our opinions and that they don't reflect the opinions of anyone that we may happen to represent. And of course, I said it at the top of this, you're a referee and you're free and entitled, you have freedom of speech, you're entitled to talk about any topic which you deem to be appropriate. But what you shouldn't do is forget about the way that you apply justice through officiating. And you need to think about not doing anything that would allow anybody to question the integrity of any decisions that you might make on the field of play subsequent to making those comments. And also, obviously, trying not to. Of course, we know as referees we are honest and we have integrity, but don't give anything away that may suggest otherwise in terms of us being influenced by anything other than pure judgment, which is, of course, what we should be focused on as referees. It is strongly advised, and I have to say that this is something that I in my personal, social media use, would never make comments on specific clubs, teams, football associations, leagues, any of my colleagues, because that could lead to, us not being able to work effectively as a team. If it was something about a colleague, potentially myself not being selected to officiate on a specific league, or be chosen by the county FA for county cup fixtures if I made a comment. And really, we need to be clear that we don't want to lead anybody to make any suspicion of us being biased or having any form of impaired judgment. I know that every social media platform that anybody uses have community rules and terms of use, and you must try to respect those. I mean, that just goes for anybody who's using social media, really. But as a referee, I think it's even more imperative that you do that. And then, of course, if you're out on the pitch and you've got to make a difficult decision, if it's a penalty decision, for example, and it's very close to the boundaries of the penalty area, you might give yourself a minute to think about, am I going to award a penalty or am I going to award a free kick? It's definitely a foul. Well, okay, try and apply the very same thing to a social media post. Think about the context of what you're saying. Are you adding value to a particular conversation, or is it a malicious thing that you're trying to say? And good practice for that is of course probably the best way to go. I think the other thing is to think about tournaments you might be going to officiate on, teams that may be about to play in that, and about the way that you're preparing for that. It's important to make sure that you don't say anything that, again, could lead to questions of your integrity, your judgment, bias, anything like that. And also, obviously, thinking about the images and information that you publish, because rights for images are very, very, very expensive. We're talking 4 figures for some images these days. So if you don't own the rights to those images, you are liable for a lot of money, potentially, that could go wrong. So you need to think very, very carefully about that. I want to think about the post as well, and I've kind of touched on this as well, which is that you think about the dignity that you're going to show, the dignified post that's in good taste and is not disrespectful or obscene in terms of the language or the imagery that it uses. I think those are really, really important things. I've talked about, obviously, trying not, try not to. It's unacceptable to make insulting or offensive comments about anybody, which could be disseminated. Again, you're damaging your own integrity, and you're basically saying I'm somebody who can't be trusted. And try not to, well, again, I say try not to, absolutely not posting any content that is threatening or obscene or harmful to the reputation of yourself or the people that you represent, as I've said, or your colleagues or any of the players that you may be officiating. And yeah, it just inappropriate communications of any form are going to potentially have a massive effect on the integrity of the game, but also you potentially landing your county football association or the league that you officiate on in trouble by doing that. So we think about the benefits. There are fantastic benefits. There is live information on football available at the drop of a hat, and on refereeing, as I've talked about. There's a number of fantastic resources that get shared. It allows colleagues who are not close to each other, obviously even more so now with coronavirus, to be in touch and to share ideas and to talk about how things are going. And education is a massive thing that we've seen. I know that there's a number of referee sites that are actually sharing great educational content. And as I'll touch on towards the end, the third team is also producing content which is educational, which has been launched recently, which you can find as well on our YouTube page, which is really good stuff that we can all use social media to share that content and to get it out there, to make it more easily accessible to as many referees as possible. And of course, being involved in debates about particular things, because at the end of the day, the laws of the game is a book, and our job is to interpret those laws into a manner in which we see fit to officiate the game effectively. So we need to maybe, for example, the incident which I mentioned earlier about the no penalty incident in the Bundesliga in Germany, which was I think it was either last weekend or the weekend before. We can have a debate, and we can have an understanding that not all of our colleagues would reach the same decision as we might because of their interpretation of the laws of the game. Not everything is, as the phrase is so commonly bandied about these days, not everything is so clear and obvious as it could be. And of course, Twitter and Facebook, I know definitely, and I'm sure the others do too, have the ability to translate tweets, so we don't have geographical or language barriers to understand how our colleagues overseas are looking at situations, what their approach is, potentially what we can learn and what we can take from them. There's a lot of positives in that respect, but of course with positives and benefits come risks. The risks are that the privacy within your personal life is then compromised to some degree, not a terrible degree, but to some degree. And the protection of the privacy and confidentiality is much harder to guarantee as a consequence of that, and then that can also impact your job as a referee. And of course, we know that from a security perspective, there's not always information being transmitted. It's not always in the most secure way. And of course, there are potential risks of other things, such as people impersonating you and then taking what you've said out of context. I'm sure we've all seen fake accounts popping up and getting reported. Those are things that regrettably we do have a kind of a risk of, which we want to try and avoid as much as possible. And again, I've talked about it, abusive and prejudice and obscene. Racism is a big thing that I think we touched on as well earlier on. Racism is a big thing at the moment, and it rears its ugly head. It's something that if it's something that should have been stamped out centuries ago, but you're always going to get people. There are a minority. The majority of people are good people in society, but you're always going to get a minority who are going to make criminal, and it is criminal, it's against the law, comments. So I think that those are all really, really important things to bear in mind. Now, as I move forward back into the control and the controllables, and we can think about what we can control from not only a social media perspective, what I've just discussed, but actually also from the side of the stuff within games. So my pre-match preparation, I've just obviously spoken about the pre-match routines and how that can have a positive impact on the way that you deliver matches. You know, the way that you communicate with people, your body language. These are all really, really important things. You know, I think one of the most important and most simple things we can do as referees is you arrive at a game, you go and introduce yourself. It's as simple as that. Hello, I'm Nathan. I'm going to be refereeing the game today. If I can help you in any way, or you got any questions about anything, come and let me know. You know where I'm at. You know my dressing room. You know where I am, wherever it may be. It doesn't matter what the context of the game is. If you make yourself approachable, you make yourself friendly, your communication manner is warm, you are off to a good start. Because one of the things we talk about so many times in football as referees is how approachable was that ref. You couldn't talk to that ref. So it's really, really important that you make a good impression on that kind of thing. And then, of course, observers will love me putting this one in. I'm absolutely certain of that. The equipment that players wear, we make sure that any tape is the same color as the main body of the sock. We make sure that we have no sort of jewelry or anything that shouldn't be there. Making sure that any thermal base layers, whether they be on the top or in the shorts, are the same color as the main garment on that part of the body. Those are things that you can control, and I would actively encourage you to have a think about, you know, other things that you may be able to control. And yeah. So I'm now going to move on to the potential to take questions. I don't mind in what form the questions come. I'm happy to take them in the chat. I'm happy to take them. You can open your mic if you want to do so. It may be a better idea if you've got a few questions that are the same type of thing, that maybe I try and answer a few in one if I possibly can, if they're on the same topic. But so while you get your questions in, or think about what question you might want to ask me, just to obviously sort of drive home the point, you know, what I do. I'm a resilience trainer. I'm a mental toughness practitioner. It's been wonderful to be able to deliver this session this evening. I'm really grateful for the level of interaction that I've had. You know, at the end of the day, the power is in the room, I would normally say, but unfortunately, I suppose the power is in the chat room, I suppose we would say now, because we're all referees, we all have experiences, and we can all help each other with what we've experienced out on the field of play. So if you want to drop me an email, if it's something that you want to maybe ask me about privately, or you want to get in touch with me, my telephone number is there. My email address is also there. That's an email address for me as well. And the website is something that we've got a lot of the content, which I've also discussed. We've got a couple of videos on there about how we'd normally deliver things in non-pandemic times, but also about couple of workshops that I've run, online webinars, I should say, sorry. And you can find all of them, because not all of them are on the website. You can find all of them on the YouTube channel. When a new one goes out, it'll be posted on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we all have pages. I'm going to put them on, I think it's called IGTV. I'm going to put them on there soon, so you'll be able to get them on there, but they're all on YouTube at the moment. So you can subscribe to the page. I'm going to be putting a new one out shortly as well in the next couple of weeks. Need to record it. I'm doing weekly blogs on a Friday, and if you visit the website, you can sign up to the mailing list to receive that directly to your inbox on a weekly basis. A lot of tips that we've had. Last week we talked about being assertive and making sure we don't cross the line on being aggressive. Some of you might have seen that. And yeah, really grateful for your time, really grateful for your interaction. You've made the session what it's been, and I'm really pleased with the interaction that we've had. So I'm happy to take any questions that you might have now.
Nathan, I'm just conscious we have obviously overrun a little bit on this
sorry.
one.
Sorry.
Right, no, not a problem. What I would suggest is if anyone has got any questions, we'll put your details or that slide that's on the screen now.
Yeah.
We can put that somewhere visible. Perhaps if they get in touch with you directly.
Yeah, no problem.
All I'll say is, guys, that obviously joined us. Thanks very much for tonight's session. Thank you for Nathan as well. Obviously, the guys that have joined in have been fantastic.
Yeah.
What we've got next week is a newly promoted to level 2A Berks and Bucks referee, Sonny Gill. And he will be going through a session on how to give yourselves the best chance of promotion. And also he would welcome a question and answer session as well. So that will be next week's topic, Tuesday, 7:45. And if you're watching this on the record, you can sign up for the session by going to the Berks and Bucks website and joining up from there. But from today, I'd just like to thank Nathan for his time and putting on the session for us today.
Thank you for having me, Chris.